I'm so glad you're with us today on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. You know, happy Friday to you. I hope your day is going so well. I'm having a great day, and my great day is about to get a whole lot better thanks to you, because we're going to hear how I stink.
Can I also say one quick thing? And thanks to you, to everyone who's donated already to Christmas Kids. Have you seen, people are so generous. It's really incredible.
I mean, I every year, this is our 34th year of Clark's Christmas Kids, and I get nervous every year. We're going to take care of the wishes of these precious children who sometimes at birth or at different ages all the way through their teenage years end up without parents that can take care of them and end up in the foster care system. And I want these gifts for these kids Christmas morning, where adults have disappointed these kids over and over again through their lives. I want them to know they're cared about, because the kids get to make these wish lists, and the teenagers never expect that they're ever going to see anything, and certainly not what they asked for, which is why the match game we play with Clark's Christmas Kids is so important, because the kids say what they want, and how cool is it that Christmas morning they actually have those gifts thanks to your generosity. And I'm just so grateful. And you know, this thing works, that we're at it 34 years. ClarksChristmasKids.com. So I got a little off track.
That was my fault completely. I'm sorry.
No. And it doesn't stink at all. It's a great thing. By the way, later after Clark Stinks, do you know that under a new obscure provision, older workers can now sock more money away in their 401ks in 25, a lot more. And this is a stunner, because it's hard for people who start saving later and they're like, oh boy, I got to get on this to catch up. And this is a turbo catch-up provision. Don't know how long it'll be around, but it's around for 25. I'm going to tell you who's eligible, how it works. And we've got a tool for you at Clark.com. You know, we keep designing these individualized tools that you can put in your exact circumstances and see what works best for you. This is a tool that makes it possible for you to estimate how much your retirement accounts will grow over time based on your age, what you got in, that kind of stuff. And so you can see if you're on track or not. So now it's time to see where I got off track, off base, just flat out wrong, and Clark Stinks.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
All right, we're going to start off on a positive note. If Clark does smell a little, it's only because there's not enough positive information coming from the show. Perhaps you could figure out a way to include more stories about great customer service or companies doing the right thing. Here's an example of customer service that goes beyond belief. Back in August of 21, I purchased a very expensive and awesome surround sound speaker system from Klipsch with a 1-year warranty and no extended warranty. About a week ago, and more than 2 years outside the warranty, the soundbar started cutting out and then died. No power, nothing. After doing some research, I found out the power supply buried deep in the soundbar was built with faulty components for this product line. I called Klipsch, I really struggle to say it, sorry.
I don't even know what this is.
It's
a
like
fancy, a premium brand?
Yeah. Corporate customer service with a smile on my face, and after jumping through some minor hoops, they are sending me a completely brand new system valued at $1,100.
Wow.
No charge to me. They know about the faulty power supply and decided to do the right thing. Steve,
thank you, and I really appreciate positive messages. You know, as a general rule, when people are having a good experience, they don't share it like you do. They share with us when they're frustrated and dealing with customer no service. That's why you hear more negative than positive.
Clark stinks worse than a field of open corpse flowers by his suggestion to try Walmart Plus for perks, including quote-unquote free delivery, grocery delivery. Unlike Amazon, they suggest you tip for your delivery. If you spend $100 on groceries each week at 15% tip, that's over $750 a year in tips that could be saved by just doing pickup at store where they bring to your car without a tip. Keep this up and you'll have to change your slogan to save less and spend more. Rich.
Rich, good point. The tip is voluntary, as I understand it. So you can give as little as $0 or as much as you wish, but you're right. I mean, picking it up yourself, you eliminate that issue at all. Curbside.
Clark stinks worse than our kitty litter box after a long weekend. Clark frequently talks about Medicare disadvantage plans, in quotes, but fails to discuss the states, we're in New York, that allow folks to switch back to standard Medicare without requiring Medigap underwriting. I understand that this affects only a small percentage of the audience, but would really like his perspective on Medicare Advantage plans for those in the few states like New York that are much more flexible than other states. Scott,
thank you, and your point is completely valid. I'm trying to remember, there are 3 states. It's just a tiny handful that do it right, that allow you, if an advantage plan turns out to be a disadvantage plan, to not be punished for the rest of your days and be able to migrate back to traditional Medicare. Interestingly enough, I just saw a story a couple of weeks ago that the disadvantage plans themselves are patient dumping. That if somebody ends up with a really terrible illness, they're saying, it'd be so much better for you if you went to traditional Medicare. You'd get much better care, and then the taxpayers are getting stuck because then the insurance companies are only cherry picking and dumping really sick patients back onto the taxpayers' rolls rather than the insurance company rolls.
you stink worse than a vacant house strewn with garbage that's been there for a year. Don't believe in rent control? How is it that major corporations can conspire with a company that created algorithms to artificially inflate rental prices based on fake occupancies and run that program mafia style to make sure the corporations comply? While rent control is one solution to deal with high rent over and over again, corporations continue to prove that they are greedy and will do anything to take the most amount of money out of working people's pockets. We need real solutions for working people. Finding out down the road you've been duped out of money is not helpful. Neither is another class action suit. Jane,
thank you. This is a story that has gotten a lot of publicity in the financial press and not in the general media, but the apartment owners have been conspiring, allegedly, price fixing through sharing confidential data with each other through a third-party data company to be able to push rents up above where they would be in a free and open market. And my attitude about that kind of thing, fines don't do anything, class actions don't do anything. What makes a difference when there's illegal behavior is when people go to prison. And we never seem to prosecute corporate crime in any meaningful way other than these meaningless fines. So absolutely, I understand your frustration, and it is flat out wrong that the apartment owners have been engaging in price fixing.
not so much a stink as an educational opportunity. When you answered a listener's question about their credit union pulling credit in the process of opening a checking account, you said it was weird that the credit union would do that. You did mention that all institutions are going to do some sort of verification to find out if you have a bad history using a checking account before. This part is true. There is a system separate from the credit bureaus that is used to check for a bad checking behavior. But as an ex-credit union employee, pulling credit is not weird. I know that we did a soft pull of credit when starting a new relationship with a member for two reasons. One, it was one way to help mitigate against fraud. If someone's credit was frozen, that always stopped us. We weren't opening an account from identity theft. And two, a soft pull was enough for us to see if there might be opportunities to offer a refinance of an existing loan held elsewhere to save the member money. Since it was a soft pull, it did not affect the person's credit score or history. Judy.
Judy, wonderful post, very thoughtful post, and I love that the credit union you work for was doing soft pulls. And soft pulls, if you're familiar, a hard pull is one that will impact your credit score and shows that if there's a lot of those, it actually shows a pattern that could cause a problem applying for a mortgage. A soft pull does not do that. It's almost like what happens in most states where your auto or homeowner's insurer is checking your credit every month. Those are soft pulls, not hard.
You stink more than the Minnesota Vikings trade for Herschel Walker in 1989. Just kidding. No one stinks that bad. Recently, I told you my father-in-law fell prey to the Iraqi Dinar scam, and I asked where I might unload it. And you said, quote unquote, the black market. Truth be told, I loved your answer, and I think I get what you mean, but I forwarded your response to a bunch of friends and others, and none of them thought it would be good advice to have anything to do with a black market. What I think you meant in this case is not some sweet, low-lit back alley trade, but take my chances with one of the unregulated trading, quote-unquote, businesses that a simple Google search might list. I love what you do, Fred.
Fred, thank you very much. And yes, that is what I meant, that it was not something you could trade on traditional Forex exchange.
Clark talked about going across state lines to buy big-ticket items, avoiding sales tax. He should not be advocating this because every state that imposes a sales tax also has a use tax. People are supposed to declare items they bought out of state and brought back home and paid less or nothing in sales tax than if they bought it in their home state. I know a lot of people do this anyway, but it doesn't make it any more okay, and you should at least warn people of how it's supposed to be done. Matthew.
Matthew, thank you. This came up a lot. If you go back when internet sellers were not charging sales tax and they had a direct advantage over local businesses, and a number of states at that time publicized that that didn't mean you didn't owe the sales tax. It just wasn't collected by the internet seller. As a practical matter, there was no effective way for states to collect those taxes, and it has been a common practice that by your telling is tax evasion. I think a lot of people put this in a category of tax avoidance, but you may be technically correct that it is tax evasion to not then settle up with your state on the tax.
Clark stinks like my daughter's hockey goalie gear.
Well, that's really stinky, right?
I was glad Clark stood up for paying good attorneys reasonable fees, and the $700 an hour is a relatively low fee these days. But he missed the mark by calling the fee for attending correspondence sent by a client a quote-unquote junk fee. As attorneys, we are responsible for knowing everything in any correspondence sent our way, however delivered. If the correspondence that the caller sent would have changed the estate plan or otherwise had a negative implication, the failure of the attorney to take the time to read it and appropriately address it would not just be bad client service, could get them into trouble with the bar. My father, also an attorney, would fire clients who complained about him taking time to read a letter that they sent and quote-unquote just wanted to put in the file and not be reviewed. Also, Christa suggesting to look for reviews of attorneys online is bad advice. As a specialty profession, I would not trust unverified and out-of-context online reviews. I've seen many reviews for colleagues that are clearly not from clients, but people wanting to trash the attorney for some reason. A better route is to ask for referrals from people you trust in the profession or that work with attorneys regularly. And additionally, there are good organizations that keep lists of qualified attorneys. In the trust and estate practice, the well-regarded American College of Trust and Estate Counsel has a good list of members. John.
John, thank you. And I do get asked questions a lot about hiring an attorney who specializes in wills, estates, and trusts. And I had no idea that there was this particular association with a list of members. I appreciate that.
Clark, you stink as bad as my New York Giants. You mentioned
we got NFL references all over. I love it.
You mentioned on Tuesdays, or I guess it was a podcast I listened to on a Tuesday, that you should check the flight status before you leave home and see if it's delayed or canceled. You can come later. I used to think that, but one time my flight said it was delayed, so I did not go to the airport, and then it changed to on time and I missed my flight. The airline would not rebook me, and I had to pay out of pocket. Yol.
So, Yoel, that is a terrible story. And it's inexcusable that United left you stranded and you had to buy a new ticket. I mean, if they're the ones that put the flight as delayed, what, heads you lose, tails you lose? That's just not the way to do business. I have found that the real advantage to me when I check status of a flight and I see that it's canceled or delayed is I'm then scrambling to rebook before other people can get those seats, because it's kind of like Hunger Games at that point when a flight gets canceled, especially during a holiday period, which is what I was referring to. That's why I want people to use FlightAware in addition to an airline's own status updates to see what's actually going on with your flight. With FlightAware, I want to state again, you put in the flight you're taking, the route you're going, and then you find your flight, you click on it, and then there's a thing that'll show you, where's my plane now? You can click on it and see what's actually going on with your flight and have early warning system if there is a problem with it.
Clark, all my boyfriend does all day is listen to you. I go to sleep to your voice and am startled awake by it. I'm starting to hear it in my nightmares. Any advice? Claire from Connecticut.
Well, Claire, I think you need to tell your boyfriend this is a line he can't cross. That it's either him or Clark. And kick me out of his life.
It's Clark or you, Claire. That's what you mean. It's either, she says it's either me or Clark. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, so I think you let him know that I am the most annoying person you've ever had to listen to, and I got to go.
Or go to clarkdeals.com and find some cheap headphones for Christmas gift for him. Don't you think? Then he can listen with headphones on.
Well, I think it's easier to say, just get rid of me. Right? I mean, I'm coming through as a digital file. Just dump me. That would be the easiest thing.
Okay.
I know you don't like that answer.
I don't.
Of course, you immediately did a pitch for Clark Deals since it's holiday season.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. All right. Well, Claire, I'm really, really sorry. Maybe by osmosis, you are picking up some great financial advice that will help you in your life or later in your life. Maybe that'll be the good part of being stuck listening to annoying me. Well, thank you so much for all your posts. I appreciate it so very much. Coming up ahead, I want to talk about great new news with 401ks. If you're behind on saving for retirement and you're approaching the years that you hope to be able to dump out of work, there's a special provision that Congress passed that starts this year that is weirdly only for people in their early 60s, 60 to 63 years old. And it allows you, when I say this year, I mean, obviously, your elections for 401k for 25. I say obviously. That's what I meant to say. You're allowed to save a crazy amount of money in a workplace 401k. If you're staring down the barrel and not having enough money aside to be able to bag work and having the opportunity over those 4 years to pile money in, it can make a big difference. In just the traditional or Roth version of the 401k, somebody 60 to 63 years old is allowed to put in almost $35,000 into their 401k. The exact amount, $34,750. I mean, this is called super catch-up. That's actually what Congress labeled it, is the super catch-up provision. They didn't allow it for people who are 64 and older. They didn't allow it for people 50 to 59 who are covered by regular catch-up, which now will be $31,000 you're allowed to do per year. And I saw a chart in the Wall Street Journal they'd taken from Vanguard about what percent of people participate in catch-up. And of people who are earning six figures, 150,000 and above, only a little more than half participate in catch-up. And it may be they're not even aware it exists. Because catch-up really, and particularly super catch-up, is geared towards people at the higher end of the income scale. Maybe when they were younger, they were dealing with paying for kids, and now their kids are out of the nest. And this is an opportunity for catch-up and super catch-up to put more money aside and build up more wealth. Now, I know I've always got this argument from people about whether you should do traditional or Roth. And it's all about your tax rate right now and all that. But as I've said in the past, if you're earning less than a ton of money, let's say 400,000 is what I'm calling above that is a ton, you want to be doing the Roth provision, especially if you're behind on saving for retirement. Because the advantage is that effectively you're saving a lot more money, saving 30 some odd thousand in a Roth 401k versus 30 some odd thousand in a traditional 401k. And then there are some big employers that have something that's on top of this that allows you to do additional money into a 401k that you may not even know exists, but that will allow you to save potentially up to as much as nearly 70 grand in a year. And if you are self-employed, you're a solo employee, you have special privileges at any age in something known as a self-employed or solo 401k that lets you just shove money into retirement accounts. That is a great opportunity, and it's an advantage of being a self-employed individual. Christa?
Okay, Ben in Florida wrote in with this. I've always taken your advice to pay off credit card balances a few days before my statement date in order to increase my credit score, and this has served me well until recently. I received a notification from the credit agency that my score had dropped 27 points. What had happened was I had some large bills, home and auto insurance, I'm in Florida after all, that I had charged to the card, and I was planning to pay off a few days before my statement date. As it turns out, the credit company reported my card balance a full 2.5 weeks before my statement due date, resulting in a high utilization rate and a massive drop in my credit score. As a result, I no longer have an exceptional credit rating. I've been demoted to very good. I hope my experience will be helpful to other listeners. It's not your statement balance that's reported, but rather your credit card balance at any moment during the month, whenever the credit card company decides to report it. So going forward, I'll be watching my balances more closely during the month and paying them down if they get above a specified dollar amount.
Okay, so this is a very good post, and let me tell you that I've noticed that a lot of credit card companies, it seems the bigger issuers, are now reporting to the Bureau continually, rather than as they used to, what your closing balance was for the month. It's not universal at all that that's what's going on, but obviously your issuer is reporting continually to the credit bureau and showing a spike within the month. Now, if you look, though, if you have like a Credit Karma account or something like that where you can check your score constantly, you will probably see that the score is changing dynamically through a month now where it really didn't do that before. But in the case of your situation, the 27-point drop from being somebody who is some level of golden above 780, and now you're still upper 700s, you're still fine. You're still getting the best loan products and all that. There's no danger sign for you. Where it becomes a problem is somebody who is around 700, a 27-point drop is significant, meaningful, and harmful
Kate in Alabama says, is binding arbitration a condition of sale for all cars now? I negotiated a purchase price and was ready to give them my money, but they would not sell me a car without signing the agreement. I walked, but will I be able to find anyone besides a private seller who won't require an arbitration agreement? I last bought a car more than 10 years ago, and I refused to sign then, and they still sold me the car.
Okay, so great question, Kate. I had this before from somebody who was so annoyed about this, and it's become standard operating procedure. A lot of the dealership groups now are very large publicly traded dealer groups, and they, as best I know, universally, they've all adopted the arbitration agreements. Corporate America is terrified of ending up in court and you having your constitutional right to a court event, and they're doing these kangaroo court arbitrations. The good news, if there is any, when buying a new vehicle, there's not a lot that might happen that you would have a need to go into arbitration or want to file a suit against a dealer. But I don't like mandatory arbitration at all. I don't want to beat a dead horse because I've been beating that dead horse for decades, and it is, if arbitration was a fair system, I'd be okay with it. It's not. It's crooked. It's dirty. It's rotten, and it's unfair.
Greg in California says, I hear you talk about medical stuff frequently, and almost always as frequently you tell us to get info from a quote-unquote medical journal. Well, what is an example of a medical journal, and where do I find those I can trust? It seems if there's a publication, advertisers could be paying for so-called studies, meaning how can I trust them?
So, all right, so here's my deal. Is, yes, there have been scandals involved where researchers have not done the straight up and up. Occasionally that will happen with the really respected medical journals, but very, very rare that there's any cooking of the books on what you're going to find in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the New England Journal of Medicine, and Lancet. Those three publications, Lancet's a British one, I find that they are excellent, and a lot of times doctors are so busy in practice they can't keep up on the latest. That's why I want you, because you're motivated, because you've been diagnosed with something, to read to the source where the researchers are cutting edge. What is the latest science and medicine on whatever it is that ails you that may not be widely known in clinical practice? And in addition to that, I find that the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic, even though they're not writing the research of the other three, their explanations of what you need to know about a specific condition you have, not necessarily the latest, greatest research you'll find in the medical journals, but the information put out for medical consumers at Mayo and at Cleveland, both of those clinics, I think is great. So you're hearing this from somebody who would not have made it an hour in medical school. I don't have a medical or science brain in the least. I mean, the only thing I'm worse at is anything in the arts, because I got no art side at all. But I can tell you that the medicine and science is tough for me. But I've been able to learn what I've needed to learn with the medical conditions I've had, including cancer and with my heart. I've been able to learn what I've needed to know by reading these publications. And they've been so helpful, even if it's hard for me to understand them without reading the stuff and looking at medical terminology and understanding what it means. But it's been very, very helpful to be your own advocate and not get lost in some kind of Google search that takes you down a rabbit hole of stuff that you never know what's accurate, what's real, and what's not. The medical journals, I have faith in. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. I hope that your weekend is absolutely outstanding, and we will see you Monday.